It had been 8 years since Eleanor Hart had returned to her family homestead nestled in the red canyons of southern Utah. After her husband James passed from a sudden illness, life in the bustling mining town of Silver Hollow had become hollow itself. So she packed up, sold the little shop they had run together, and returned to the dusty porch of the house her father built with his bare hands at 53. Eleanor's days were filled with a gentle rhythm, tending the garden, mending quilts, and sipping her morning coffee beneath the white sky. The wind in the canyon had become her most loyal companion. It whispered memories through the cottonwoods and rustled her skirts like an old friend. She had grown accustomed to solitude, not because she preferred it, but because it was what remained. That changed in late June. She first saw him at dusk, a lone rider on the ridge, silhouetted against the blushing sky, paused at the edge of her land. He didn't call out, didn't wave. He just sat there, watching. Then slowly he guided his horse down the hill, his movements deliberate, respectful. When he reached the split-rail fence, he dismounted, removed his weathered hat, and spoke. "Ma'am," he said in a deep, steady voice, "might I trouble you for some water? My Mari's been walking a long while." Eleanor, cautious but never, cold nodded. "You'll find a trough just past the barn. There's a pump beside it. Help yourself." "Thank you kindly." She watched from the porch as he led the Mari to water, his movements calm, methodical. There was no rush in him. No tension, no swagger. Just a quiet presence that filled the space without demanding it. She thought he'd leave once the horse was watered, but he stayed, first to fix a loose saddle strap, then to ask if she might have a biscuit or two to spare. He introduced himself simply as Cole, not Daniel, not Mr. Cole, just Cole. Over the next week, he came by often, once to fix a squeaky barn door, another time to help chop wood. "Just earning my keep," he'd say with a half-smile that barely tugged the corners of his lips. Eleanor, who hadn't laughed freely in years, found herself chuckling more and more at his dry humor, at his gentle teasing, at the way he always seemed to know just when she needed help without asking. They spoke of ordinary things at first. The dryness of the season, the stubbornness of hens, the price of flour in town. But slowly, stories unfurled like pages turned in a well-worn journal. Cole had once worked as a cattleman, then a wrangler down in Arizona. No family left, he said. Lost his wife a long time ago. His eyes held a storm when he mentioned her, then settled again like the calm after thunder. One evening, as lightning painted silver veins across the distant mesas, Eleanor and Cole sat on the porch watching the rain approach. He spoke of Mary, a school teacher with a kind heart and a fierce spirit, taken too soon in a land dispute that turned violent. Eleanor shared memories of James, his love for old radios, how he used to hum off-key when he worked in the shed. The way he held her hand, even on his worst days, their stories didn't compete. They harmonized. Something unspoken grew between them, not a spark, but an ember, warm, steady. A companionship born of shared loss and deep understanding. Eleanor found herself looking for Cole's horse in the mornings. She baked more than she needed, and when she caught herself humming while sweeping the porch, she didn't stop. But the canyon, for all its beauty, was not free from trouble. Rumors arrived with a traveling peddler. A rancher named Tibbins had begun staking claims along the southern ridge, pushing boundaries, hiring men with guns to assert his will. He claimed to hold deeds to land that had never been for sale, including parcels near Eleanor's. That same evening, Eleanor found a note beneath her door. "You don't know who he really is?" No signature, no explanation. She held the paper in trembling hands, heart pounding. It was as if the wind had shifted, warm turned cold. Could it be about Cole? The next morning, she watched him differently. He arrived with fence nails and a quiet grin, But now every word seemed wrapped in uncertainty. Was he truly just a kind-hearted drifter, or had she let a stranger too far into her world? Yet when he asked how her day was, his eyes searching hers, for something deeper, Eleanor felt a tug in her chest, not of fear, but of longing. She wanted to trust him, wanted to believe that love, even now, could knock gently on the door and be welcomed. Still, the note remained in her apron pocket all day. That night, the canyon wind whispered louder than usual Dot and Eleanor Hart widow. Homemaker, heart just starting to stir again, lay awake wondering whether her past had led her here, or if her future was about to be rewritten. The wind carried the scent of approaching rain as Eleanor stood at the edge of her porch, the note still tucked into her apron pocket. Its words echoed louder than the chirr of evening crickets. "You don't know who he really is." She wanted to dismiss it, but her instincts, honed from years of hard living, told her this wasn't the kind of warning one could ignore. Cole hadn't noticed the shift in her eyes yet, or if he had, he didn't let on. He still arrived, early with quiet chores and left late with grateful nods. But Eleanor watched more closely now. The way he always scanned the horizon, the way he tensed when hooves echoed from the road. There was a rhythm to his stillness, like a man trained to stay invisible until absolutely necessary. 2 mornings later, Eleanor made a decision. She harnessed her old mule, Daisy, and took the creaky cart into town, something she hadn't done in months. As she passed the dusty storefronts of Rattlesnake Junction, familiar faces waved. She stopped at the general store where old Horace, who had known her since childhood, leaned over the counter with curiosity. "What brings you down from the canyon, Ellie?" "Looking for flour and information." Horace raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "About a man. Calls himself Cole, tall, quiet. Rides a gray mare." Horace leaned back. "Ah, him. You know him, not directly, but I've heard tell." "Man like that doesn't go unnoticed." Eleanor's voice lowered. "Is he dangerous?" Horace hesitated. Then he said, "No, not dangerous. But he's been places, Ellie. Rumors he used to ride with the range marshals down in Cochise County. Good man, by all accounts. But something happened down there. A shootout, a boy died. Some say he took it hard, left the badge behind, and wandered north. Why would someone warn me about him?" Eleanor asked softly, because not everyone forgives a past they don't understand. The ride back home was slow. She passed the dry riverbeds, the scorched grass, and the wind-tossed cottonwoods that lined her land. By the time the homestead came into view, her thoughts had settled. That evening, after a silent supper of beans and cornbread, she invited Cole to sit with her on the porch. "I know," she said. He didn't pretend not to understand. He didn't play coy. Instead, he stared out toward the canyon, the last light turning the rock walls golden. "I figured someone would tell you eventually," he said. She waited. "I was a marshal once. 5 years. Carried the law like a cross. Kept my hands clean. Until I couldn't anymore. There was a rancher feuding with a family, claiming land that wasn't his. Tensions rose. Shots were fired. I returned fire and hit a boy, not even 17. Wrong place, wrong time." His voice cracked, just slightly. "His name was Lucas. His mother screamed like the earth had split in two. I couldn't hold the badge after that. I couldn't pretend I hadn't changed." Eleanor listened, her hands folded in her lap. "I came north to disappear. I didn't expect to find you." There was silence between them, not awkward, but thick with understanding. Finally, Eleanor spoke. "I've buried a husband, raised a daughter, tended land with blood and blisters. If you think I'd turn away because you've known sorrow, you don't know me at all." Cole looked at her then, fully. The vulnerability in his eyes mirrored her own, but there was no time for tender words. because that same night, hooves thundered from the South Ridge. 3 riders. Tibbins' men. They didn't approach the house directly, but circled near the barn, spooking the livestock. Eleanor grabbed the rifle James had left above the hearth. Cole, ever calm, took it gently from her. "No blood tonight," he said. "Let me talk to them." He walked into the dark like a man who knew shadows better than light. Eleanor watched from the porch, heart pounding as words were exchanged, low, firm, steady. Then louder. "You're trespassing," Cole said. One of the men laughed. "Tibbins owns this land?" "Not according to the land records filed in town." "We ain't here for records." "Then you'll be leaving," Cole replied, "before I remind you how the law still echoes in this canyon." They didn't draw weapons, but they didn't smile either. After a tense pause, they turned their horses and rode back south. Cole returned to the porch. Eleanor exhaled the breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "We need help," she said. "Legal help." The next morning, they rode into town together. Eleanor visited the clerk's office and retrieved the original land deed, while Cole spoke with an old friend, a former marshal named Barrett, now a lawyer. Over the next week, they gathered evidence. Witness statements, maps, historical records. And when Tibbins tried to file a claim on Eleanor's land, he was met with a legal blockade reinforced by signatures, truth, and the weight of a man who still remembered justice, even without a badge. When it was over and the papers were signed, Eleanor stood beside Cole in front of the courthouse. "You could have left," she said. "You didn't have to fight for this." He touched the brim of his hat. "I stayed for you." That night, the stars above the canyon felt closer than ever. They sat by the fire, sipping tea. Eleanor broke the silence. "I used to think my best days were behind me, that love only came once." Cole looked at her, his voice soft. "I used to think the same." She reached out and took his hand, weathered, warm, real dot, and for the first time in years, Eleanor Hart didn't feel like a woman surviving. She felt like a woman beginning again,